Here, brief introduction before I share my screen, I guess. I am Master Anij Kailash. I run Kailash Sewing Shop, though it's been kind of in mothballs-ish for the last few years. I have been sewing technically since I was a kid, like 5. But then I kind of took a break from, I don't know, I'd say around... I didn't do a whole lot early teenagerhood, and then I did a big project for 4-H right when I was like at the end, 17, 18. And then I didn't really touch it again until I moved here to Missoula, found Belagarth, and my significant other was buying tunics from another garber, and they kind of kept falling apart. And so I got frustrated and learned how to make them myself. So after that, other people were like, can you make me garb? And I was like, I guess. Do you have money? And so I started my own job. What I learned through doing this, I used to be someone who only used patterns. I'd never tried anything else. And the first person who actually introduced me to not using patterns was when I was working on that project for 4-H. Me and a friend were doing 2 similar projects together. She was making a Japanese kimono and I was making a Chinese qipao. And we had to make some adjustments to the qipao to make it fit me. And yeah, we brought in another pattern from a Chinese shirt to help. And she was just, merging things together. And I was like, oh, how do you do that? And then she started showing me, just drawing up things and making them. And I'm like, what is this magic? So I was sure that I couldn't do anything like that. And then I started learning how to make Belagarth garb and making things from tutorials and stuff like that. And kind of started to figure it out. So this class is going to be taking a look at some of the basic tutorials that we have circulating around. I'm going to use 2 of mine only because I know them really well, and they're the ones that I generally use, so I can better illustrate. But taking concepts like this, you can use with other tutorials as well. Basically, good tutorials are like a recipe. You can input your measurements, and you should be able to draw out the thing. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. And I'm just going to do my full screen. And then, okay. So the 2 tutorials that I'm going to be using this time are my tunic tutorial, which, let me go down, makes a basic tunic similar to this. It's kind of like a T-tunic, except it has this extra curve here that takes the place of a gusset. And then the other one that I'm going to be doing is my pants tutorial, which just makes some nice kind of straight pants like this. So let's go over to GIMP here. Come on. Where's my GIMP? Here we go. And we're going to start with the tunic. So here's the basic tunic shape. It's kind of like when cutting out a snowflake, you draw out a quarter of the tunic you need. You place it on fold here and a fold up here. And when you cut it out, you end up with a full tunic that then you just basically have to sew up the edges and the sides. It makes it really simple. But there's lots of ways that we can adjust it. Of course, one of the basic ways that you can do is to adjust in your neckline. This is just a basic, just illustrating a basic like circle neckline. But if you wanted to turn it into a keyhole, you would just bring it down here and do that. And boom, you have a keyhole. Make sure to only do this on half of it rather than all 4. So what you would do is you would cut out your tunic like this. You would unfold this fold up here so that your back of your tunic is hanging out up here. And then you would cut this out for your keyhole. Another really simple way to adjust this, obviously the sleeve length depends on, you know, what you or your customer wants. But, you know, short sleeves, long sleeves, it doesn't really matter. Let me bring up some photos of some things that I've done. So this one, he wanted a keyhole neckline. This is how deep he wanted it. There's an under tunic underneath it that's fairly simple. For the sleeves, in order to get the right length, I actually had to add an extra bit on. So I used trim to cover that seam there. But so that's just that. And then this one, nope, there we go. This one actually is the same pattern, but with some, or same tutorial, but with some adjustments. You can see I use the same trim trick here to join these two pieces. But for this one, let's see, I had keyhole, tapered, or not tapered sleeves, sorry, widened sleeves. So I just brought that down for that shape. And they wanted, I was basically replicating what's called a blot. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But they wanted side openings that could be laced up and it would show the underdress underneath. So what I did for that to the pattern is I basically did this. I brought in this armhole and down a little bit on the sides. I'm not sure if I actually drew that quite as long as I should have. But basically what that meant is then that there was not enough fabric to actually join that at the side in a hem. Instead, I folded it, or I did a lining, or not quite a lining. Facing. Yes, thank you. I did a facing on the inside right here, so that I could put eyelets in, and then made it so it could lace up, and you can kind of see that here. I hadn't put the lacing in yet because she was actually providing it. So that's that one. And then another variation on this was this guy. Technically, he called it a surcoat when he ordered it, but he didn't really want it like the surcoat patterns that we have. So what I did is I just adjusted our tunic tutorial for it. So this one has short sleeves. It has gores. I don't know if you can see, but what I ended up doing is basically straight cutting it instead of doing this taper out. And then this taper was cut out with a different fabric so that you could get this two-tone. And then it also had a riding slit, which is basically the same as the keyhole. It's just down here instead. And I think it was more of just a straight slit instead of, you know, tapering out and then down, but you get the idea. Oops. Then let's see. Another really important thing to remember when doing, when adding these types of trims, applique, stuff like that, do it when the tunic's flat. Sewing up the sides and doing the, you know, any fold over hems, those are like the last thing that I do when I'm making these. So I put any trim on, fold them over, sew them down. I put any applique on so that it's all nice and flat. Then once that's all in place, everything's good there, then I sew it together and turn it into a three-dimensional object, so to speak. Another one that used this same tutorial was my Master Artificer dress. This I did basically short sleeves, and then I cut out a octagon's not the right word, tapered rectangle to make this tapered sleeve here to attach to it. And then I also put in, oh, I am sorry, I did not get much sleep last night, so I'm forgetting terms. These flowy bits here. So that's that. And then I also had gores on this one too, so you can see the pink. Yes.
Okay. Tippets.
Tippets, yes, the long flowy bits that come down are tippets. Yeah, so that was the main one for that. And then let's see. Also wanted to one last variation of this one. I had some requests for making coats. The coats that I made previous to this were using a specific pattern that a certain unit used, and they preferred that I did not make that for other clients. So I had to come up with my own. So what I did is I just used my tunic pattern and I adjusted it for a jacket instead. This one was sleeveless. It had a mandarin collar added on. This one I basically just cut off the sleeve bits and did a slit up the front. This I was still figuring out sizing and measuring when you're taking out bits of fabric like this, such as the front. So it ended up being very snug on the intended recipient. So definitely something that needed more adjustment and stuff, but that was a cool project. So that's some adjustments for a tunic. Just, you think you have, okay, just a basic T-tunic type shape, but there's really a lot of ways to play with it and a lot of different things that you can make with it. Before I go on here, is there any questions about tunics or how to play with that shape?
No, that's really good. I like your original pattern, and I like how you're able to adjust that. It's very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. And if you want a copy of the tutorial, it's up on the Guild library, or I can link it too. So.
Oh, sweet. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll make sure that gets linked in the chat here. Okay, cool. So pants is another one. This is a cool, let me pull up the pants tutorial here. It's a cool pant pattern because it's fairly simple. Again, I make use of 2 folds, just like my tunic tutorial. I put the crotch cut out here, so that what you end up with is basically a giant U. You sew that together and then you do some magic flippy floppy with the fabric and end up with it looking like this. So this is basically that U bit there, and then you can sew up the sides and then you get pants. It's fairly simple. I can make these now in 45 minutes to an hour. I can whip out one of these. I've made quite a few of them. We did a competition at BFTR a few years ago, taking sewers of all levels. Part of it was to test out this tutorial. And they made them in about an hour and a half. First time they'd ever seen this tutorial, and they got them, most of them got them done in about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. So this one I really like to give to new people. And some ways that I have played with this one. Let's bring up this guy. So your basic pants are flat out at the bottom. Some people prefer, that they come and they gather at the bottom to make a little bit more of kind of a harem pant type shape. it makes it sometimes a little bit easier to not, get mud on them or whatever. You can also shorten these so that they basically become kind of medieval shorts. So that's kind of fun. Also, if it's full length and it has elastic at the bottom, sometimes fighters will bring them up and put that elastic, right on by their knee. And then it'll be short, but then they can make them long for when it's nighttime. And for that, all I do is widen it out to the edge of my fabric. So originally, this is if one edge of your fabric is here and the other one's here, and then this is the selvage edge. Normally, this is 19 inches wide from the fold. If you just take it out to the edge of your fabric, normally that, depending on your fabric, that can add quite a bit, especially if you're working with linen. Let's see, normal linen's about 54 inches wide divided by 2.
27.
27, thank you. And then you take 19 out of that.
16.
Okay. So yeah, you're adding another 16 inches on each layer. So that they can get very poofy very quickly. And so that can be fun. And then to make roost pants, which I don't make very often anymore, just because I had a lot of trouble with doing this part down here, making it so that this didn't bunch up, stuff like that. It was very frustrating to make. But to make those, all I did was basically shorten it to make up for this, widen it to make them extra poofy, and then cut out a small rectangle for the close bits at the bottom. And then, had to gather that all up, match them up lengthwise to what this was, added some way to lace them up, and there you go, wristbands. I've tried other tutorials for wristbands, and a lot of them get very complicated very quickly. A lot of them, you have to add in a crotch gusset and stuff like that. I personally really don't like trying to figure out how to put in gussets. Gores I've figured out, but that other half of the diamond I just have a real hard time with. So I have spent quite a bit of time figuring out how to adjust my patterns to not have gussets, and making sure that there's still enough room and material and all that. So your mileage will vary. If you're fine with gussets, then there's definitely, other tutorials out there you can use, but that's what I like to do. So that's the pants. There's not a whole lot of variations you can do with pants, but that, that gives you some ideas. Oh, I remember one more that I forgot to add in here. So one thing that you can do to do a side stripe is you can actually take some out from your 19 inches or just add it onto the edge. Actually, that's actually probably a little safer. So I'll actually do it that way instead. So just add, however wide you want. Normally about 2 inches. And actually, this will be a separate piece. It won't actually be connected to the. It'll just be a separate piece that you're drawing. Here, I'll just do this one. And this will be like some other type of, some other color fabric. So let's say you were doing gray and black or something like that. You could do gray here, and then you'd cut out a strip of the same length of of black fabric. Sorry, doing two things at once. I don't know if it'll let me do this one. Okay. You know, you cut that out, and then when you're sewing up your edges of these pants, you would just insert that. Instead of sewing the two sides of the pants straight together, you would put the strip of fabric in instead. And that way you can get a nice cool stripe up the side of your pants. This is also effective if for some reason you need to make the pant waistband wider. So that can also be a cool way of adjusting clothing as you know, our bodies change and stuff. So that's that. The only other kind of cool adjustment that I've made is to it's an apron dress pattern that I use from Dagger here, actually. And by playing with, you know, what colors I use for which parts of the dress, these two are technically the same pattern piece, I guess, that you use, but you just cut out 4 of them. So one goes on the front, one goes on the back, and then you've got the 2 sides. And so what I just did is I cut out 2 of black and 2 of red, and then I put the red on the sides to make this cool two-tone. So that's just some cool ways to adjust, you know, play with patterns, play with the pieces that you have. I've done this with cloaks as well. The cloak that I make, you use 4 pieces to put together to make the outside and then the inside. And I've been able to play with doing, you know, black on the front 2 panels and then green on the back 2 panels, or alternating, or, you know, whatever the customer's wanting. And that can create some really cool patterns. So yeah, that's about all I had for today. Actually, it went quicker than I thought. Any questions?
No questions really, but I really like the pants. I've been wanting to try to make some pants that are very similar to that.
Okay.
I've noticed we have a lot of fighters that have really long strides,
Mm-hmm.
and they end up ripping apart at the seams, like the crotch area. Yeah. And this pattern looks perfect for something like that.
Crotch rip, dear.
Yeah. My significant other was mentioning that he doesn't believe we've actually had any crotch rips with this pattern. I think possibly very early on, but after that, we also do. I'll show you here in the tutorial. We suggest doing 3 lines of stitching.
Okay.
So we do 2 straight stitches and then a zigzag on the inside of that straight stitch.
Okay.
We've had fabric fail, but not stitching.
Yeah. You could also, you know, do this bit on the inside. You know, you could finish this off with a serger, but I would recommend at least having 1 straight stitch, not from a serger, in there. The clothing that I have seen fall apart, unfortunately, normally has been done only with a serger. And I don't know if there was just something wrong with how they had their serger set up or what.
Yeah.
It would largely depend on the number of strands being used by the serger. 3-strand is weaker than a 4-strand, and just depends on, you know, the number of strands that they were using and the nature of the fabric.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what kind of fabric they were using, nor how many strands they were using, but I like the pattern because it would definitely be able to fit, and I like the fact that you're using the 3 stitches as well.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. That will definitely
I'm
be
also
really good.
using polyester cotton mix. It's called what is it, dear?
Target? Or
Yeah, trigger target. I'm not sure if you can find this at Joann's anymore. They kind of really narrowed down their selection of it, but it's kind of like a sports fabric, but it doesn't have stretch. It's just really sturdy. You can also do it out of duck, though those are really stiff pants at that point.
I'm gonna hijack real quick.
With linen, you want to make sure you're doing a French seam, so there's no
Are you still on full screen, or are you giving?
I'm sharing, but let me stop share here.
So this is one of the first tunics that we ever made. All right, this is going on almost a decade old.
Yeah, I think it's about 7 years old.
7 years old. So here's where it is starting to fray and it is starting to wear out.
And this is with a cotton.
Yep.
A cotton.
And it's starting to fray here along the seam.
Okay, what's that?
The seam is still intact. It's the material that's actually wearing out.
Oh.
And this also, I believe, was one of, yeah.
This is a fabric I probably should have French seamed, but I didn't know how to.
Yeah,
at that
because
time.
if you don't, then you get the runnies. And this is with the double stitches. We haven't started the zigzag on
Is
this
that
one yet. We had the
linen or
zigzag.
It's the Walmart duck.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
So it's the soft
soft duck.
duck.
But yeah, the place where it has started to wear out after hard use is here in the armpit, and it's the fabric that's going. So, all right, back.
Let me grab those links here for those 2 tutorials.
back line.
Okay.
I don't know if I have your pants tutorial.
Okay. Yeah. They're both on the Gedden Guild library,
Oh.
which I'll go ahead and link as well in case you don't have that.
Whatnot.
This is a really cool resource if you don't have it. Basically, we've been trying to collect all the tutorials in the community. I don't think we've gotten all of them, but we're trying. If you ever have something to add, feel free. And then here, let's see. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Guild library. Let's try this again. Copy link. That's what I want. So here is, I believe, my tuning tutorial. Yes. And then here is my pants tutorial. Like I said, play around. The tunic tutorial I actually modified from an earlier dagger here one. I'm trying to remember with the pants one whether I took it from anything. I don't think so. I remember that I got the idea somewhere, but I don't remember where. And I think by the time that I made this tutorial, I had adjusted it so much from the original that I saw. That's why I didn't credit it. But the tunic tutorial
Is you.
the tunic tutorial I also adjusted quite a bit, but I'm pretty sure I credited that one, maybe. Maybe not. Huh. I should go back and do that. I also changed it quite a bit from the original. It could be why I didn't, but
Right.
it was from an old Dagger Hair one. That the original tunic tutorial for this one, it had you draw out the entire tunic, both sides of it, on the fabric, and not folded, nothing ever. The fabric totally flat out, and you had to draw out everything. And I was like, that seems dumb.
Especially if the lines aren't really all that different.
Yeah, the lines are exactly the same except for around the neckline. And
Don't say we should sell your neckline piece.
my concern was getting all the lines and angles the same on all four sides, basically. And
That would be the method on how they would do it commercially. They lay everything flat and they basically cut everything out flat with no layers, no fold, nothing like that.
no chance of anything being off.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. But yeah, for us, it made better sense to fold things up.
Because there's always that little millimeter of differentiation that might happen if it's on the fold, or you're not true on the grain, or.
Yeah. And that is one thing that neither of my tutorials really take like grain and stuff like that into consideration all that much.
Or right side or wrong side.
Yeah, or right side or wrong side. So if you have fabric that has a right side and wrong side, you definitely have to adjust it a little bit to
which I discovered at Chaos Wars when I did the sew along with you. And my collar facing piece had a right side and a wrong side, and I had to redo it because
that when you're putting that together, that definitely is a thing. Thankfully, most of the fabrics I currently tend to work with don't really have that, because I tend to work with a lot of single color fabrics that are, it doesn't really matter which side you use, so that's nice. But when you start doing other fabrics, like I right now I'm halfway through doing a cloak demonstration class for my realm, and I decided, I'll use flannel because it's easier for small, for machines that aren't as for less heavy duty machines, because I have a really heavy duty FOF, and that's how I make my cloaks is using anti-pill fleece, and that'll go through like 6 layers of anti-pill fleece when I'm putting on the hood, and it's all gathered and all that stuff, because they're lined as well. So I was like, I'll use flannel so that they might actually be able to follow along at home. And flannel's really sticky. It's really hard to fold how I want it to. And it has a good side and a bad side, so that's fun. At least the printed flannel I'm using. So yeah. Yeah.
So what?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. So what would you say would be the best type of material to use for pants, specifically for pants that would be used for fighting?
Probably Trigger Target. It's called different things depending on who produces it. So sometimes it's called Trigger, sometimes it's called Target. It's a polyester cotton blend that I've found is the most durable while not being too stiff. If you've got a fighter who's super hard on pants, you might try and just go with the canvas duck cloth. Just wash it a lot to get it a little softer for them. The only problem with the polyester cotton is it's not great in the heat. if the pants are more open, or they can turn them into shorts, by pulling them up when they're gathered at the bottom, probably is not going to be too bad of an issue. But if you're looking for something that actually breathes, you're going to want to go with linen.
One of the important things to remember about Belagarth combat is, unlike other societies, we don't armor our body against the ground. So my pant leg is what's grinding on the ground. So that is important. Linen will work, but remember, like, depending on how they fight, are they heavy knee walkers? How do they fight on the ground? Something to remember is that fabric.
Do they wear knee pads?
Yeah.
Right. And do they wear them under their garb or over their garb? Right. I wear my knee pads under my garb, So these are things, and I'm also relatively static when I'm legged. So I generally have linen or lighter cotton pants. But those are just things to think about too.
One wear issue that we've seen is, especially if you're wearing the like harder knee pads, like carpenter knee pads, the ones with the plastic shell. If you're wearing those under your garb and your winter fighting space is on a hardwood floor,
Oh, just gonna say that.
you're gonna get melt areas with the friction. It won't necessarily make holes, but you're gonna get some stiff parts right around your knee. Yeah.
Bad plan.
Yeah.
It happens.
Good points.
So yeah, just it also depends on what the person that's going to be wearing it, what their preferences are, what their cost abilities are. Honestly, there's not a whole lot of difference between getting the trigger and getting linen from like fabricstore.com, because they're both going to be about $10 a yard. And for pants, you're looking at maybe 2 yards.
3
pants.
3. Well, for a shorter person like Selkie.
Yeah.
2.5.
Yeah. It
Well,
depends how
for
tall
myself, maybe 2, but for somebody who is 6'3",
I would get 3. Yeah.
I use 3 yards with my pants.
Yeah.
Brett needs 3 yards, almost 3 yards for his pants. So,
yeah. For this, I said 2 to 2.5 yards. Really, the only length, or the only, so you're using half the width basically because it's folded, right? And so what you need is twice the desired length of the pant or the pants. So depending on how tall the person is, where their waist is.
I have 47-inch legs.
Okay.
wow.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. So yeah, you would be looking at about 2.5 yards.
Yeah, but when you order from fabricstore.com,
you go ahead and get 3.
It's the whole yard or
yeah.
or not.
So make sure when you're ordering fabric from or purchasing it, take into account it's probably going to shrink. So you definitely want to get a little more than you need. Personally, I beat up my linen when I get it. I go ahead and wash it in at least warm water, and then I throw it in the dryer for the normal dry cycle. That way, when I give it to a customer, I'm not like, now make sure to only do it on cold and don't put it in the dryer, because they're a fighter. They're gonna throw it in the dryer or washer.
Yeah.
They're just gonna put it in with their normal clothes. So I try and make sure that they don't pull it out and it's doll sized. So
Good things to keep in mind. Thank you.
yeah. Any other general questions? Running a shop, making things for fighters? Anything?
No, there's a couple projects that I do have in mind, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I still need to make my own garb as well. I start thinking about what I want to do for other people before I do something for myself, unfortunately. But
yeah, I've only had, I think I have 2, maybe 3 sets of garb. that are mine. Meanwhile, for Oroku and of course, other people that I've made garb for, yeah, making things for other people is much easier than making stuff for myself.
I having to look at every little stitch. Oh no, I did that wrong. Oh, I should have. Let me redo this. It's, I can completely understand
Did
that.
I just discover my project for a person that is not within my realm, or
So Elena is my journeyman, and so she has a list of things that she has to get done. I, of course, as master, would never suggest such a thing, but if that is what you wish to do, I will not stop you.
just got an
The
idea.
gears are turning.
Most people who have big mouths is for to stick foot in.
Yay! Yay! Yay!
She's been having a hard time finding someone,
Well,
as I also did when I was doing it.
well, we live in quarantine life right now, and yes, you live in Montana, but I talk to you regularly, and your partner knows how to measure you accurately.
That's also true.
So,
I also fairly know how to measure myself pretty well as well.
so it'll be easy to go through the design process for you. Yay. Write that down.
Because I was. But yeah, no, projects are fun. I guess the only thing I can say for people making things for other people is watch your burnout, because it's very easy to get burned out very quickly. And so pace yourself, try and make sure you do some fun things in between, orders if you're taking orders. Keep the joy in it, because otherwise you're just
3 and 21.
The orders kind of get endless. Our customer base is extremely happy to have people who sew, and so sometimes sewers get overwhelmed very quickly with projects.
Yeah.
I completely understand that. Yeah.
Well, I am going to stop the recording because we've been
Sounds good.
recording. Thank you, Master Anij, for your wonderful class. This will be uploaded to YouTube at a later date. Thank you very much.